Hello and welcome everyone to this series of Sedna 101 webinars. This session will be looking at the fundamentals of search. So we'll be looking through all of the search functionality in detail and look at all the different options you have for creating very useful searches. So let's dive straight in and have a look at all of the options we have available. So hopefully I can just move over to our demo system. Fantastic. So just a quick introduction on the search feature itself before we dive into the different searching options. So a few things just to clarify, to start with a bit of terminology. So when we talk about searching in Sedna, you might hear us referring to searching or filtering. Essentially, those two terms are interchangeable at Sedna. So whether you're searching for one historical message in an archive or whether you're filtering your inbox down to only the messages of highest priority to you, that's using the same set of search features and options. So searching, filtering, pretty much interchangeable terms. Next up, we've just briefly alluded to the archive. Obviously, with Sedna removing the sort of front end mechanism for deleting a message, therefore, the archive becomes this comprehensive repository, comprehensive archive, if you will, of all of the communication throughout the lifespan of using Sedna. So as such, it becomes doubly important to be able to search that archive effectively and efficiently. So that's where the speed and performance of Sedna search comes in. So for those users who have actually had a chance to use Sedna for some time now, hopefully you could all agree that the speed and power of the search really is what sets us apart from potentially other systems. And even with an archive volume of potentially over 40 million messages, we would still typically return search results in less than a second. So hopefully the speed and the performance of it is eye-catching in and of itself. So just another introductory piece before we dive into the different search features, just to reiterate that Sedna searches are constructed using individual terms. So if we're looking for a message that contains two separate words, ensure to put those into the search bar individually. Otherwise, we'll be looking for that one long string of characters, which obviously those two words might not necessarily appear in that specific order. So best to put your terms in individually, and we'll look at some examples of doing that in just a moment. So with all of that covered, let's dive into the actual search feature itself. So you will note that the search bar is available at the top of the screen, and there are two main components to the actual search itself. There's the first component, which is where we are searching, so where we're running our search from, and then what we're actually searching for. So to start with, you can see even without any sort of search criteria entered, we still have a token in the search bar that denotes where we're currently looking in. So we have the in tokens that correspond to the different views within Sedna. So here you can see by default, we have an in inbox token. And if we navigate to any of the others, we can see that that search token updates accordingly. So if we want to make sure that we're searching across absolutely everything within a team, we can either go ahead and navigate to the All tab, or we can just remove that search token, which will take us to the All tab to search across everything within a particular team. Now, the next point to mention is that that's all well and good if we work specifically within a team. But what happens then if we want to search across multiple teams, or we regularly work across different teams and mailboxes? So rather than taking the same search and having to run it multiple times across the different teams and mailboxes that we have access to, let's straight away look at the different team tokens that help, again, define where we are running our search. So you will notice that we have the team selector drop down up there, but then if you want to specify more than one team to run a search across, we can just add the team tokens. So we can just start typing any of the team names that exist in our environment, and we can add a token accordingly. So for the sake of our demo system, let's say we want to search across the training team. But we might also want to choose a few additional teams to search across as well. So let's say if we've got a standard sort of accounting team, for example, and then we might also have let's just use operations. So here we can, for example, search across subset of our available teams so that we don't have to run the same search multiple times. As well as the individual team tokens, we also have the all teams search token as well. So if we just remove those for a moment, and you'll notice that hopefully you might have just noticed that if we click on Sedna in the top left-hand corner, it's essentially a quick home button, but you can see that's a quick way of clearing the search bar as well. So if we then, sorry, forgive me, we are looking at the all teams search token. So we just simply type in all teams, and we should see that token available to select as well. So with the all teams token selected, this will simply expand our current search, our current view, across all of the teams that we have access to. So rather than having to define each team individually, we can just use one token to search across everything. So the all teams token will be restricted to the teams that we have access to. So it won't show us anything outside of the teams that we've been assigned to as a user. But this then just a quick and easy way of searching across everything that we can access without having to run that search separately. So that essentially defines the where I'm searching. So now we can move over to look at the what I'm searching for side. So with these different search options, let's start with the sort of very basic, standard sort of text-based search. So we're just looking for any term in a message. So if we type anything in the search bar, you'll have the option of running a text-based search for that term. So if we use the text search option, that will look for that exact string of characters, but it will search across all of the message subject lines, all of the message body content, and any comments. So it is quite a powerful quick search, but just be aware that the limitations of it is that it is searching for that exact string of characters. So you may need to add a couple of alternatives for things like spelling errors or any sort of variation of those terms. So that's the standard text searches. Then we also have the sort of fairly basic searches on any of the different types of tags we have available. So if, again, we just start typing anything into the search bar, we should see a list of available tags returned. So we can search based on either the green transactional-based job references, the blue thematic category tags, or the purple people tags as well. You may have also noticed that we also have these asset tags or asset indications that we can search on as well. So these relate to the job references. So we'll just explain how we can use these very briefly. So with the job reference searches, obviously those are searching based on a specific transaction. And taking any of the job references, if we see them in the message list, we can just click on them directly to basically run a quick search for that whole transaction history. So the job references themselves are just very easy. Just click on them when you see them in the message list, and that is a quick search for the transaction history. But what about if, for example, using that situation where we had, in fact, let's use the Andromeda Ocean. So here in this prime example, we have several different references that relate to that particular asset. So typically speaking, these assets are corresponding to vessels, but obviously if there's a different use case, then that asset might well refer to something else. But you can see here that that asset tag is basically a higher level job reference search that allows you to search across any messages with any of those Andromeda Ocean tags applied in this case. So if we were to run this search, we can see that it will return results for messages relating to the latest voyage or any other voyage that's been tagged with that reference. So it's important to call out those asset tags because those are primarily used when it comes to searching and can be helpful to search across sort of vessel or asset-based searches rather than the actual transaction themselves. So we can move on from the text and tag-based searches and move on to the advanced filters that you can see sort of below the text-based searches. So in the advanced filters, we give you the specific fields that you can define where you want to search in. So rather than searching across, for example, the text-based search, which searches subject line, message body, and comments, you can choose to specify your search within the subject line, the message body or the comments. So we can narrow down any sort of false positive matches from the area of the message that actually we're not interested in searching in. We can also, as hopefully you've noticed here, we also have the search fields for the address fields, so the from, to, and CC addresses, and the attachment file names. So within these fields specifically, we do offer a degree of partial matching within them. So as mentioned, the text-based searches are exact match searches, looking for that exact string of characters. However, we do offer, as mentioned, a degree of partial matching within the address fields and the attachment file names. So what that means is that I can basically take part of an address, the domain, for example, and do a from search based on anything coming from those particular addresses. And then, as you can see here, that's returned those results for the partial matching of that domain. So the same is true for the attachment file names. So that essentially allows us to do things like file type searches. So we could do, for example, just a .pdf search from the attachment file names. And you can then see that we've returned all of the PDF attachments with that search. So just to reiterate, exact match searches with the text search or partial matching with the address fields or the attachment file names. Then we come to look at two of the different search modifiers we have. So we've already sort of briefly looked at the in searches. So there's just something else to look at there, but we're also going to have a look at the is and the has searches. So simply by typing is into the search bar, you will see that you have a couple of search options based on the read status. So we can search for messages that, as you can see, is read or is unread. Just to be aware that that's read or unread by the current user. So that would be me, or I suppose you, as you're looking at those. And then if you do happen to have the notes feature currently enabled, we also have an is note search as well, so we can search specifically on those notes. We are currently doing a bit more development work on the notes feature. So for those who are sort of looking a bit confused and don't really know what that relates to, we hope to be making some significant announcements on that front in the near future. So those are the is searches, and we've already alluded to the majority of the in searches, but there's just a couple of other options there as well. So if we type in, we get the option, obviously, of selecting any of the search tokens that correspond to our inbox or in our drafts or in our archive, and we can obviously mix and match those search tokens accordingly. But if we do have the delayed send feature enabled, then you will also see the in scheduled and in cancelled searches as well. So these tokens give you very quick and easy searches for any messages in that scheduled sending state haven't yet been sent, so that you can very quickly and easily review and make sure there's nothing substantially amiss with any of those messages. And likewise, we also have the in cancelled search as well. So should a message have been cancelled for whatever reason, again, we can just do a quick search for all messages, and that can then, all of those messages can be returned in one easy view. So that's the in searches, the is searches, and then we also have has searches as well. So the has searches allow us to search on message characteristics. So again, if we just type in has, you can see all the has options we have available, starting with have attachments, has comments, and then has any of the types of tags, categories, people, or jobs. You may have noticed also here a new feature that's in our final stages of testing and it is due for release before the end of this quarter. That's a has unread comment search token as well. So especially at the moment, whilst obviously travel restrictions still are in place in the majority of places, and we might not all be back to working in centralized office environments. Something like a has comment search is particularly useful because it gives us a really quick and easy view of all of the messages that have had some internal discussion on them. So even if we're not all sat next to each other in our teams or in our centralized offices, we still have a quick and easy view for reviewing and catching up on any internal discussions. So the has unread comment search token also goes one step further and filters out all of those comments that have been seen. So from this list, you can see the red speech bubbles here are the messages with comments that we've not seen, and the grey ones are messages with comments that we've already viewed. So the has unread comment token will filter out the comments we've already seen, leaving us with just a very quick and easy way of catching up with all of the unseen internal discussions. So those are the sort of main search functionalities. There are a few other sort of miscellaneous options, so we're just going to look at a few of those to round off, and then we'll move on to looking at the Boolean search operators. We've already somewhat touched on the OR searches, but we'll look at those in a bit more detail and show you how we can fit all of these different searching options together to create really, really complex or really deep searches. So the few final searching features we have available. You may have already noticed the date slider up here at the top so that we can refine our set of search results down by a given time frame. So if we know we're only interested in things within the last week or within the last few days, for example, we can set that slider accordingly. Or we can also use the time button to change that slider to a manual date entry field. So we can manually specify the date range that we're interested in looking for. So we can either specify a start and end date for this set of search results, or for example, if there's been a handover at some point, I might want to leave the to field blank, so it's an ongoing search, but there might be a cutoff date. So I'm only interested in messages from that date onwards, because before that it was handled by somebody else. So we can use the date search for that sort of cutoff as well. Forgive me. Right, moving on to another one of our sort of miscellaneous search options is the message ID search. So you may have already noticed that above each message in Sedna, you will see this unique ID number, and that's unique per each individual message. And it gives us the opportunity to very quickly then move to a message that we might be chatting about with a colleague. So for example, I can very quickly, if I'm chatting with a colleague about a message, I can open up what we are talking about by just typing in the ID number, and you'll see that message ID search option there. So you can use that message ID to search on, so don't forget about that as a search option as well. Then for those customers that make use of the My Messages feature, you've also got an option for searching for a colleague's view of My Messages. So for example, if there has been a situation where somebody's had to take some short notice leave, or someone's off at a weekend, for example, and there hasn't been a proper handover, well, we can just take a view of our colleagues' messages. So then we don't need to worry about having reassigned things or having shared search filters or anything like that. So if I just type in a colleague's name, you will see I can search for all messages that, for example, my colleague Greg is tagged on specifically, or if I scroll down to the advanced filters, you'll see the My Messages search. So by applying this search, I can then basically replicate my colleague Greg's view of his messages, so that I can essentially step in and cover at the moment's notice without, like I said, without any substantial handover. So let's then move on to the Boolean search operator. So we've looked at all of these individual search options and the different ways in which we can find the things we're looking for. But we might need to create searches that have multiple terms, for example. So if we just start typing in a term in the search bar, and we hit enter, we can see, obviously, we've run a search for that particular term. So if we were then to enter a second term without specifying anything between them, this will automatically run an AND search. So this will search for any message that mentions both of those two terms. So in Sedna, you can take that sort of needle in a haystack approach with the search where you know you're looking for a particular message, but you might not be able to remember anything specific about it. You might remember a rough time it came in, you might remember roughly what sort of contact sent it, or maybe a couple of terms within the message itself. So using the AND searches can help you refine your list of search results and get down to that specific message you're trying to find quite quickly. So as long as there's anything about the message at all that you can recall from, as mentioned, the attachment file name, or whether or not it has an attachment, or whether or not it has a comment, or any aspect of that message that you can remember, you can then search accordingly. So to go back to the Boolean search operators, so if you don't put anything between two search criteria, it will automatically run an AND search. But if instead of putting in our secondary term straight away, we choose to type in OR, we can then select an OR search. So just to be mindful of the fact that this option at the top is running an OR search, this option underneath is running a text search for the word OR. That's probably not going to be quite so useful for you. So just bear that in mind and probably ensure you select the one at the top. You know when you've done it right because OR appears in the grey bubble, and then the text in the search bar changes to add an alternative term. So we now know that we're searching for anything that mentions term 1 or term 2. So when we add in our secondary term now, we know that that set of search results is finding messages that mention either of those two terms somewhere. Likewise, with the OR search, we also have NOT searches as well. So we might want to strip something out from our set of search results, or just apply a series of NOT filters to our inbox just to help refine and filter out all of the unnecessary noise and things that we know with certainty that we're not interested in. So much the same way as using the OR search, all we do is type in NOT. Same as last time applies here. Select the option at the top in the grey bubble rather than the text search. And again, you know you've done it correctly because the NOT appears in the grey bubble and the search text changed to add a term to negate. So now we can strip something out from our set of search results. So perhaps, for example, we just don't want to see any messages coming from this particular address. You know, we are interested in this particular set of search results, but we just don't want to see anything coming from a certain address, so we can filter those out accordingly. So AND searches by default, or just type in or not to specify any of those searches. Okay, so with that covered, there's just a couple of very minor things to cover in terms of other search functionality. So we'll just cover that off for the last 5 minutes or so, perhaps a little bit longer, and then we'll throw the session open to any questions. So again, just a reminder, any questions you do have, feel free to submit them in the Q&A section, the Q&A window for this webinar, and we can address all of those in just a few minutes. So the few final pieces to mention about searching in Sedna that really fit under any of the other sections. The first thing to note, if we have created sort of quite a long search, it's got a few terms, or you find yourself running out of space here in the search bar. So for example, let's just put an example search in there. One I always use is searching for my name, but also accounting for spelling mistakes. So remember, the exact match behavior means it might be worth putting an alternative search in there to catch common spelling errors. Perhaps, we also want to have a look for all messages that have a comment, and let's say all messages that mention, a particular reference that I'm interested in following. Etc., etc. So if we were to expand this search out and we find we don't have enough space in the UI to add any more terms, we can use this pencil icon, the modify custom query option, as you can see here, which will bring up an interface for us to have much more space and much more control over adding more search criteria. So basically, if we do find that we're creating long searches, we can't quite fit them all in on the sort of basic search bar, feel free to use this editor for a bit more detail when creating a search. Also, it's worth noting as well that we've recently introduced some new keyboard shortcuts. So, for example, pressing S will take you straight into the search bar so that you can start typing your search straight away. So should help you save that little bit extra time for moving your hand over to a mouse to navigate up to the search bar to click on. So now we can just directly click on the S key and take us straight into the search bar. One other sort of final thing to note really in terms of searching in Sedna, but something that doesn't relate to Sedna search itself, is don't forget that Sedna is a browser-based application. So there are inbuilt browser functionality that works with Sedna, one of which is the Control F or Command F for finding words within messages itself. So if we just do Command F, for example, don't forget you also have this feature for searching for something specific within a message itself. So just a reminder that you still have the browser-based functionality as well to make use of with Sedna. So that brings us to everything to cover in terms of the core search functionality. We'll just point out the two kind of addendums to the search, which are bookmarks, so saving searches for future use, and then buckets, which are these priority filters here, the things we've pinned to the top of our message list so that we can be aware of any messages matching that criteria quickly and easily. So just to take an example search, so let's just put in that one we had previously. So call that, that's all messages I'm tagged on as well. So this is pretty much all messages that I'm mentioned on, I'm tagged on, so anything that refers to me in any way. And then I can save this as a new bookmark. So let's just call that. So now I have that saved search available anytime I need it. So I don't need to create it from scratch each day. I can simply click on my bookmarks icon and then I've got that that search available to select with just one click. So obviously don't forget that if you've created a nice useful search and you want to reuse it, just simply hit that icon to save it as a bookmark. And then finally, from our list of bookmarks, you'll see that we have some checkboxes where you can enable any of these as buckets. So when the buckets are active, you will see them here pinned to the top of the message list. So greater visibility and greater accessibility to these priority searches. So that is really everything to cover in terms of Sedna's search functionality. And just before we throw it open to any questions and things, I will just point out that if you'd like to read anything more about any of the topics we've covered today, don't forget you can always use our support articles. So if you just click on the settings, click on your initials here in the top right-hand corner and select the support option, this will bring up our in-application help center. If you just do a quick keyword search for, in this case, search, unsurprisingly, we have a really useful help desk article, which will detail more or less everything we've covered in today's session. So do feel free to make use of that as well. But we will also be sending around the recordings following this as well. So with all of that said, now we have an opportunity to take any questions. So is there anything at all on any of the topics we've covered today, or anything in search in general anyone would like to flag and ask about? I will take, I'll just answer the first question that's already been posted in the chat window, just in case anyone else had a similar question. So does search work across all buckets or the bucket that I'm currently active in? And as my my colleague Sterling has already addressed. So Sedna search will search across all messages that return on the search terms in the query. So buckets are saved searches themselves. So hopefully what we've just sort of walked through has clarified that a bit. So buckets are themselves saved searches that search across the terms that have been entered. If you add more terms to a current bucket, it will then take you out of the bucket and search across all of those terms as well. So trying to sort of just phrase that a little bit differently, the search will run across all of the criteria you've defined in a particular bucket. If you have a bucket open, you want to add new terms to it, that will then take you out of that bucket. But of course, any amendments to this search, we can just save as a new bookmark or a new bucket moving forward. I believe there's also an opportunity, if you'd rather ask your question directly than post it in the chat window, we can also do that as well. So if you would like to ask any questions, feel free. I think there's an option to raise your sort of digital hand, so to speak. So feel free to do that if you'd like to ask a question directly. Otherwise, we'll keep monitoring the Q&A window and take any questions that come in. So whilst we just got a couple of minutes of downtime, it might be worth just taking an opportunity to speak to some upcoming changes that, or some upcoming development work we have in the search area. So we've already alluded to and already looked quite significantly at the has unread comment search. So that is a bit of a refinement of the existing has comment search, and obviously then refines that to only messages with comments that we as a user are yet to see. So even easier search, an even easier way of keeping up to date on sort of unseen activity and internal discussions on messages within our team. We do also have a bit of work that will be coming up to help clarify a bit more clearly the where we're searching side of things. So we mentioned about the different team tokens. So there'll be work to basically move the team tokens away from the sort of team selector drop down and include those as part of the sort of search on a sort of permanent basis. And that piece of work is basically there to complement some work we're doing in other areas of the application for some slightly smarter or more intuitive ways of working across multiple teams. So that's, as far as I'm aware, that work will be happening throughout this year and should hopefully lead to the final outcome of some, like I said, some smarter, more intuitive ways of working across multiple different teams. Okay, so a quick question. A key command to access search quickly was great. Where can I see a list of all key commands? Fantastic question. I will just point out that if you press Command J, sorry, Control J or Command J on Macs, forgive me, it's been a long time since I've used anything other than a Mac now. I always forget what the Windows alternative is. This will bring up a list of context-sensitive, it will bring up a context-sensitive list of keyboard shortcuts. So depending on what screen you're on, we'll show you the list of keyboard shortcuts we have available for actions on that screen. So if we scroll down, we can see, for example, cursor to search with S is one we've recently implemented. So there's a few to help you move the cursor focus around the screen without, you know, having to move your hand across to a mouse to click. And there's also a few based on actions as well, like archiving, opening new messages, replying, etc. If you want to learn more about keyboard shortcuts as well, fantastic. My colleague has posted a link to one of our support articles. You will also be able to find, I believe it's under the, we don't have that on our thing. You might see a product updates option on this drop-down menu, and there should be a little section on our recent introduction of keyboard shortcuts there as well. Okay, another question, fantastic. I noticed that when I do a search in add from Sedna, If I start my search under attachments and want to do the same criteria messages, my criteria disappears. Okay, I understand. So in fact, that's a great question, because that actually raises an area where we have the Sedna search functionality that we yet to really touch on. And that is with the Add from Sedna feature. So when we use Add from Sedna, which is designed to help us more easily manage attachments, we click on this and this menu appears here on the left-hand side with all of the messages with attachments, so that we can very quickly and easily pull attachments from previous messages into our new composition without sort of downloading, re-uploading, or dragging and dropping from one screen to another. And with this feature, we also have the full power of Sedna search functionality, so we can very quickly find the attachments we want as well. So the question here is that if I, for example, have a search criteria entered when I'm looking for attachments, and I then move over to the messages tab, that essentially clears the search and starts it from scratch. So we can certainly log that as a sort of feature request, a sort of product quality of life improvement there. Obviously, as it currently stands, you're right in saying that, you know, if we do, for example, a message that has a if we do a search and then we move over to messages, it clears that search, but we can certainly log that down as a piece of feedback to put to our team. Great questions coming in so far. Please feel free, if anyone, anything at all you can think of in related to search, please do feel free to ask away. Okay, so those are all the open questions addressed for now. Fantastic. So if anyone's got any more, please do feel free to submit those. And that just gives me an opportunity just to reiterate, as sort of Sterling has already linked to some support articles. Again, anything you would like to learn more about following this session, whether it's search specifically or other things like Add from Sedna or key commands or any other areas that we've touched on, do feel free to check out our support page at support.sedna.com, and you'll have access to our full range of support articles. So anything more you'd like to learn about any areas of Sedna, please do feel free to jump over and take a look. So I'm a little mindful of obviously keeping us all sat here if there are no further questions. So if we do think that we're sort of coming to the end and there's nothing really further for today's session, I'd like to give you a bit of time back in your day. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining. We'll keep this session open for a little while longer. So if anyone does have any more questions or anything they suddenly pops into their mind, feel free to ask away. But otherwise, if it looks like we're coming to the end of the questions, thank you very much for your time and participation today, everyone. And we hope to see you on the next session. And just as we say that, we have another question coming. Fantastic. So with regards to searching, in other applications, the criteria words are usually highlighted. Is that an option in Sedna? So that's a great question. Hopefully I've somewhat demonstrated at the moment that it's not currently how Sedna search works. Well, certainly that sort of additional feature of highlighting the matching results isn't currently a feature on offer. Certainly something that we can bear in mind and put back to our team, but don't forget, in that case, that's a great opportunity to use the command F, for example, to use the browser search within a particular message as well. So even if we know, for example, we've run a search for a term, and perhaps we just can't find it in the message we're looking at, perhaps it's buried somewhere, we can just also do the command F to highlight that accordingly as well. Not a problem. another call. If anyone's got any more questions, don't hesitate. Feel free to raise them. We will take any and all questions that come up. And this is a great opportunity to ask any questions you have. The whole point of these sessions is to empower you and give you extra value out of the Sedna solution. So if there's anything at all you can think of, please do feel free to ask away. Not a problem. Also, don't forget that if any question does spring to mind after this session, you can always reach out to our support team as well. So feel free to fire in any questions to support@sedna.com. We've got a fantastically helpful and responsive support team, 24/7 global coverage. So any point in time you can think of any questions or anything you need any help with, please don't hesitate to reach out to them as well. Looks like that's possibly the questions drying up for now. So again, we'll take this opportunity to thank you all for coming. Thank you all so much for your engagement. Very much look forward to seeing you on the following sessions that we run in this webinar series. But I think then we can probably wrap it up for today. So thank you very much, and we'll be sending the recording around as soon as it's available.